Before we move on with your story, can you describe to us what it's like inside a tank?
Okay, now the tank, the driver is down here and the assistant driver is over here. And then there's a turret, probably 6-8 feet across. And up there you have your main gun. Ours is a 90 millimeter. And then we had a 50 caliber machine gun that was on a turret to go on. There was 5 of us in the Tank Destroyer. Now a Tank Destroyer was different than a tank. The Tank Destroyer top was open.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't enclosed, it was open. So therefore, like when the streets in the towns were real narrow. So that was one thing we had to be real careful of. As we went down the street, somebody didn't throw a hand grenade in our turret. So we confiscated another machine gun. We had one on each side, and so we went down, we saw him moving in the houses. We discouraged that.
Yeah.
And the assistant driver, I really never did know why we had one, but he was supposed to be the radio operator. We had all the radios and the intercoms, which worked sometimes. And then we had a tank commander, and we had a gunner and the loader. And most of the time around the inside the turret of the tank, there was brackets. Each bracket held 3 to 4 rounds of ammunition, which was, about like that. And the ammunition was armor piercing, high explosives, and something else that was like if it hit a leaf or a twig, it'd explode. Very sensitive.
Okay.
And so then underneath the floor were what they call wells, and there was more ammunition we stored under there, plus some of our food. Our bedrolls we hung on the outside of the tank because we didn't have enough room inside.
But it sounds like was it cramped in there? Or, I mean,
The gunner had a little handle, and when he turned the switch on, turned it, the whole turret would go and the tank would go. I mean not the tank, the turret. It was electronic, it'd go right around. And then he could turn the other handle, and that'd give you the elevation of the gun. And then the other was a trigger, electronic trigger. And they had a little platform behind, and that's where the gunner would stand, or the loader. He'd take the ammunition, as the breech opened, he would take it and shove it in with your hand, not this way. If it went this way, cut your fingers off. But up this way, I would throw your arm up. Okay, he would fire. It would recoil and the shell, and you threw it overboard. Now with that 90 millimeter, the recoil would just lift the front end of that tank right up.
Wow.
And you didn't dare stand behind that recoil, or it would really get you.
What about the noise factor being?
Oh, well, of course, most of the noise was out front, from the barrel of the gun. But we still had it here, And and of course, we were called upon to where they needed help. We just went.
Okay. Well, start walking us through then your path through Europe from that point once you joined up.
Well, first then we didn't get to go through Paris. We bypassed Paris and went on around. And then we had at that time really had the Germans on the run, And we got to the Maginot Line. That was a fortified line between France and England. And they come up with a bulldozer. And they were going to dig your tanks in so that the front end of the tank will be elevated like that. There were so many, I think we fired twice an hour. Indirect fire twice an hour for 4 days. And we said, what the hell are we doing here? And then it dawned on us, it was the time of the 3rd election of President Roosevelt. And so we just stopped it. They said we run out of fuel and ammunition, but we didn't run out of fuel and ammunition. Of course, most of the guys later, the talk later on, the rumors is after the war, if we had gone on, there wouldn't have been a Battle of Bulge.
Oh, is that right?
They wouldn't have had time to regroup. But it was all held up there for a week. Then we went on and we come to a little town in Germany, wasn't a little town, big, and they called it the Pittsburgh of Germany. They made a steel factory. And there's between the road and around the town was a river, and of course they had a bridge. Well, we had to attack that and clear it out. The infantry and a few of the tank destroyers. I mean, they just slaughtered us. They just wiped out the infantry.
Mm.
We got in as far as the town square, and we thought those were all office buildings, but half of them were pillboxes. You know, again, so we got stymied. Just wiped out the infantry, just slaughtered them. And so we had to back off. And so the orders were, we got to take the town. We got some infantry trapped up a couple of blocks. But they said we're going to get help. And I mean, we could use the help, all right. So they brought in our company of laid smoke screen, had these big machines.
Mm-hmm.
Next morning, they said everything's right, start up the smoke machines. And they laid the smoke out, we got the tanks going, started up, and here come the mortar and the artillery. The guys running the smoke screens ran. They left us. Just quit. I gotta get a drink. After they had run and left us, they were a colored battalion. We seen them running towards the river. They said, we gotta go in and get out what's back there. Gotta get them out. So we advanced, we got into town square, and we cleared out a few of the pillboxes, and we come to a standstill. And the lieutenant came up and said, we need somebody to take a tank and go down so we can get those guys out down there by the other street. And I said, well, I can go if I can get somebody to go with me. I need one to take supplies and get them out. He said, okay, it was a cobblestone street. He said, you go up here a block, and then you turn and go about 3 blocks south. And you got to go like heck. Well, that's what we did. And when I got down there, I had to crawl out of the seat to get back in the turret. And I seen the guy sitting there holding this round ammunition. I said, what are you doing? He said, you took that corner so fast that high explosive shell fell out of the rack.
Oh, jeez.
He said, I caught it. And I said, well, thank you. I thought you got hit by a sniper.
Yeah.
Anyway, I stood up, and as I looked out that way, I heard the noise go, and I knew it was a big artillery shell. And that's the first time I ever saw an artillery shell. It was about that long, it was about that big around, and it was coming in, you know. And then it hit 3 houses over. But I didn't know you could see them.
Yeah.
But it was on the downside. So anyway, we got the guys in, and I don't remember how we got out of there. We did. And when we got back, they said, we got to get out of here. So they'd made up what do I want to call it? Some way to cross the river. Not a pontoon, but something that floated.
Mm-hmm.
So they take one tank at a time across the river. Of course, I was the last tank to go. And that made me feel good.
Yeah.
And so we finally got across, and he said, now we're going to fuel up, and then we're going into another sector. But we're going to drive at night. You know, you don't use lights. And so he said, the Jeep will lead you out. And I was following the Jeep, and it was in the middle of the night. And the Jeep was about 20 feet ahead of me. And all of a sudden, that damn Jeep just jumped, and my commander flew out of the Jeep. He hit a shell hole, and he came right back under my tank. I grabbed the levers, locked it down, hit the brakes, shut it off, and I didn't even want to look. I didn't even want to look. And finally, they said, let's see, and he was okay, but my track had just pressed his head just down into mud.
Is that right? Oh, boy.
He was one scared. I was scared than he was, you know. But it's funny how things happen. He just bounced out of there like a rubber ball.
Jeez.
And then we went on to up to a small town. I forget, it was getting close to the Battle of the Bulge then, it was started. And so we could, in the little town, we was going up a hill in the town and they told us to stop. We'd have about an hour delay. So we stopped there. We had a big old blowtorch we'd found. We set it up outside making coffee. And they ordered us to, well, we got to move up another few hundred feet. So I told the assistant driver, I said, do you want to drive up? I don't want to ruin my coffee pot and the coffee for us guys. I'll carry that. So he started up, and about that time mortar came in. Took my coffee pot. Took a couple of GIs behind me. And I thought I got hit by a rock, you know, in the ankle, in the leg. And I started walking towards the tank, and I thought, well, that's funny, I don't remember stepping in all that water and all that stuff. And what it was, my shoe was filling up.
Blood.
So they took me over, and sure, I got a shrapnel on the leg. And I stayed there that night, and then that night they took me back to a hospital, Army tent hospital, one of the new hospitals. And they fixed me up there, and I stayed till about 4 in the morning. They said, we got you stitched up, you want to stay, or it's up to you. But he said, there's another little piece in there, a shrapnel, but he said, I don't think we want to dig it out. I said, okay. He said, if you want to go back to your outfit, we'll take you back. I said, I seen all those guys laying there. I thought I'd sooner go back that way. So they took me back and passed me up, and of course then we went on into the heavy fighting of the battle, but we got there. And they called us all up, what was left of us, and they said, now we're going into the Battle of the Bulge. And they said, it's not going to be fun. And he said, let me tell you, if you got any souvenirs, get rid of them. Because he said, they're not taking any prisoners. If you lose your tank and you're still alive, you'll be a foot soldier with no replacements. You always like good news like that.
Yeah, jeez.
So we didn't quite get there, but we got to another place, and there was, we had to take an area. There was a battalion of infantry on the right, one in the middle, one on the left, and we had to clear the area. We were all supposed to jump off at the same time. So we had a TD assigned to each company. So our commander said, I want the middle detachment to go first, we can flush them out. Well, we went in first, and all hell broke loose. I mean, all hell just broke loose. We got in, couldn't even use our guns, couldn't even use the big guns to make trees, couldn't do anything, couldn't see them. And they just slaughtered the infantry again. And our tank commander said, we got to get out of here. You know, we said, how in the hell are we going to get out of here? He said, the only thing we can do is drop the escape hatch in the bottom of the tank, and we'll go out through there and get your guns. It'll be hand-to-hand combat from here on out. So we dropped the escape hatch. Well, that's all right, but the tank only sits that high off the ground. And the track is sunk that far in the mud. So you had about that much room. Well, my weapon was a Thompson submachine gun, because I had to have something I could lay behind the dash. So we went out through the escape hatch, and we got back to the back of the tank where we could get some protection. And about that time, the other right and left flank saw the predicament we was in, so they moved up. Well, that discouraged the Germans. They started backing off. And right out in front of a tank out there was 2 wounded GIs. And they were both hollering and raising hell, you know. And one of them quit, and up come a medic, and he said, I got to go out and treat that guy. And the tank commander said, don't go out there. Don't go out there. He said, I got to, he was like in a trance. I got to go. I got to go. And he said, don't go. Well, he went. Hell, he didn't make it 15 feet, you know. They killed him.
And wasn't that part of the or the agreement Geneva, you didn't shoot medics?
Right,
Yeah.
right. They had the big helmet.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
You don't mess with them.
yeah, but they still did.
Oh, they just riddled him, you know.
Uh,
And so then when the flanks moved up, they said, well, we'll back out of this mess and get back onto the road. Well, we had a hell of a time backing out of there. We made it, and we put the escape hatch back in. And then we went on to another sector. I forget where it was. I get kind of mixed up. But anyway, then we got started to snow. They said, well, give us a little piece of map. Now you go, our commander said, you go up here and you will rendezvous in a certain area. It was snowing a little bit, it was dark. So we finally got to a place and he said, hold it. I said, I think I see some of our tanks. I said, well, wait. He said, I'll check it out. So he went down and he come back and he said, be real quiet, just get the hell out of here. He said, those aren't our tanks. Those are German tanks. So we backed up and went back up on a little ridge and waited till daylight so they could take care of that little matter. But it was just one deal, just like that right after. And then we got into the Battle of the Bulge, really heavy. Snow and cold.
yeah, talk a little bit about that, because that was, what I understand, one of the coldest winters in European history. What were conditions like for you? Were you dressed warm enough?
Well, you never warm enough.
Yeah.
Because the tanks didn't have any heat.
Mm.
There's no heat in them. They get just as cold as the outside.
Almost like sitting in that metal, almost sitting in a refrigerator.
Yeah, worse than that, because it didn't warm up.
Uh-huh.
And the snow was about so deep, you know, it was just cold. And of course, all your rations froze. And nothing better than eating a can of corned beef hash. It's froze, you know, but you ate it. And the final drive of the tank had 30, 40 gallon of oil in it. That's where we'd try to lay some of our rations there. That would keep it from freezing so hard. Or we'd put some under our shirt, you know. I always kept an extra pair of socks next to my stomach. Keep my feet from freezing. When I could, I'd put on a warm pair of socks.
Oh boy.
And, but it was just, you know, just miserable. You just can't imagine what it's like never to be warm.
How does a person function like that? I mean, for that long period of time, I mean, the physical conditions of the cold, you're probably not sleeping properly, doesn't sound like you're eating properly, then you've got the stress of war on top of that. How did you function? How did you keep going, do you think?
We just, you know, you talk to one another, you know, in the tank, and you tried not to get in a real depressed situation. Somebody would say something and might be a little laugh. And of course, the bad part was when we were all holed up in the tank, you had to go to the bathroom. Tanks didn't have bathrooms.
Oh.
So you bailed out, you know, and it was dang fast, and you got back in.
Wow.
And we was sitting there by the edge of the trees one time. One of the guys said, the motors were behind us and they had vents. And one of the guys said, I'm going to take my sleeping bag and I am going to sleep on top of the motor where it's warm. He got back there and laid down, and there was a shell head over there and a piece of shrapnel over there, right down his sleeping bag. He said, I think I'll come inside now. But you know, you just got the point where you're just numb, absolutely numb.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we had such a turnover in the tanks, you know, in my outfit. All of the crew I started with were all gone. I was the only one left of it. We had replacements, but you know, it just survived. I don't think anybody can understand what it's like to be at 20 below zero and you can't feel anything and you can't really see anything. Because I looked through a periscope a lot of the time. It would frost over, fog over, you know, and you're just guessing by golly.
Huh. I can't comprehend it. I can't truly understand it. I can't imagine what it was like.
It was, and of course the metal was just as cold, you know. And then we went on to a different, we moved on, and I can't remember where that was at. Anyway, we come to a little village, and my tank commander got hit in the neck with some shrapnel. The loader had got sick or something, and my assistant driver was sick. They bailed out and they took him back for some treatment.
Were you still healing up as well at this time?
Yeah. And so all that was left was the gunner and myself. So I pulled up alongside the little building, and I said, we were just going to have to sit here and see what was going on. Well, right out in front this way was a long shed, real long, 100 or so feet. It wasn't very big. I think it was they must have raised sheep, netted for sheep. Well, the infantry started to advance, and they got trapped out in that open field, so they ran into that shed. Well, the machine gun's still going. Pretty soon I heard a loud explosion, and I knew that was a German 88.
Oh, jeez.
Shooting at him in the shed. And I could finally, about a block and a half away, him and I spotted the gun barrel of that tank. He was hiding behind a house, and he was shooting at him over here. Well, we knew we couldn't drive out that way because he'd broadside us. So we hit, the gunner and I decided, he said, can you load? And I said, I haven't loaded since then, I said, but I'll try. You tell me what you want. And he said, okay, I want these armor piercing. Now I said, stay out of the recoil of that 90 millimeter. He said, you slam it in, you tap me on the shoulder, that tells me you're out of the way. And he said, I'm going to shoot through the house and see if I can get that tank. So I threw one in, he shot. And they rejected, I threw the scation out, I put another one in, he shot. I put another one in. As I did, my foot slipped this way.
Oh, geez.
I hit him on the back, he fired.
Oh, no.
I got the recoil on the back.
Oh, boy.
Just knocked me clear over into it. I couldn't even think or see. I heard him hollering. He said, hey, I think we got him some smoke coming up. Well, I think what we did, I think we hit him. We shot through the house, we hit him. But I think he fired up the tank and he backed off. And then he looked at me and he thought I had got hit by a sniper. But I kind of got where I could move a little bit. And the next morning, we stayed there that night, and the next morning, a captain come up and he said, I want you to go with me. I want to go up and look, see where that tank was. God, I couldn't hardly walk, but the snow was still about that deep. But I always remembered the little path, and I was walking up there, and there were just stacks of frozen soldiers' bodies stacked out.
Huh.
We went up there and looked around. While we was there, here come a Jeep with a star on it. It was a one-star general. And he was checking. Of course, he didn't invite me into the conversation, but him and the captain talked it over. And then that afternoon, then I got some replacements, and we advanced on down the road. It was a wooded area, and that's the kind I didn't like because there was open areas and the wood you couldn't see. So we had about a 3/4 mile stretch where there was no protection. But we made it through there, and okay. And then a few days later, we had another map, and we were going on I don't know where. Mm-hmm. But we got up to a crossroad, and the lieutenant come back and he said, we can't go any farther. I said, the MP's stopping us. So the other armed part of the Army has priority. So that didn't bother me any. We pulled over and stopped alongside the road. We hadn't been stopped there very long, and heard somebody holler, hey, what outfit you from? Of course, you heard that all the time.
Yeah.
What outfit you in? Where are you from?
Yeah.
And he said, and then I heard the next comment, he said, because I was laying out in front of the tank in the sun. And he said, well, why are you here if you're going there? He said, well, the man up there says we can't go through. He said, oh. And then I glanced over and I seen who it was. It was General George.
Patton?
General George.
Is that right?
He said, you're going through. He walked up there and talked to that lieutenant, and he told him, crank him up, move him out.
Wow.
And that got my attention when he said General George. So we went on through there, and then the next day we were to cross, I don't know what river it was, but there was a whole lot of convoy of military behind me. I was kind of in the middle. And somehow I got stopped. I don't know what, I had to wait for something. But anyway, the road went up, and I got up there and hell just quit. And I couldn't see any road, and there's a couple of houses here, it looked like an alley, but I saw a road going that way. And the tank commander said, take that one, so that's a road. So we went up there and got up top of the hill, about a mile. The road quit. And then we could see back down. Well, we took the wrong turn. Here, all this convoy stuff was behind me. We had to turn all around, go back down between them two houses, and then we got down to the river. And while we were waiting there was a house on a hill up there, a little house, and I heard some of the officer, somebody talking, said, I think they're directing artillery fire from that house. And we looked, and usually in time of war, women aren't standing out hanging sheets on a line. So they went up there, and sure enough, that's what they were doing.
Is that right?
Some way with the way they hung the clothes on the line. Well, anyway, we got down there, and we're going to cross the river on this pontoon bridge. And of course, the rails are only that high on each side, just a little bitty thing. The guy said, no, you get on the pontoon, you put it in second gear, and you don't stop for anything. You keep right on it going. All along the bank, they put up anti-aircraft. Well, we got about halfway, and I happened to look up, and I seen two German planes up there circling. Well, they didn't hit the bridge, but they hit the water. And that wall of water come down, and it just tipped that pontoon like that, you know.
Mm.
And my tracks went up on them rails.
No.
The guys in back were ready to jump, and I couldn't get out. But we made it across, and I thought, man, there's got to be a better way to make a living than this. Just rock.
Oh.
But we made that, and then from there on it kind of got downhill. And then we went through a bunch of woods, and we had some infantry riding along with us, and we could hear something, and even above the noise of the tank, and we stopped, and we could smell it. And so we went on, and we come upon a satellite concentration camp.
Oh, is that right?
And so they had about 200 people in this camp. Of course, they had their guard towers set up and their fence. And so we pulled up there, and I don't know whether we cut the fence or one of the tanks pulled the gate open or what. But man, those people were just skin and bone, just filthy, dirty, nothing to eat, you know. But the Germans across the road, about a half a block, had built a smokehouse to smoke meats and cure meats. And you can imagine when the wind blew right, what that aroma done to those people in that concentration camp. So that people said, can we go over there and have at it? We didn't understand what they told them, but we knew they was hungry. But I walked over there, and I always remember one little lady walked over there, and she got a hold of a piece of German sausage, or whatever it was, some kind of meat. It was wrapped. And some lady was trying to take it away from her. She is swinging that thing like a Tommy Hawk and eating on it. But they were just starved to death.
Well, now, were you aware that there were concentration camps, or was this something entirely new to you?
It was off in the woods.
Oh, jeez.
This little solitary concentration camp. And I don't know what happened to guards. I guess they ran. I don't know what happened. I didn't even want to know.
Yeah. Oh,
And,
man.
but boy, and then we called back, and so I'm sure they sent up some trucks to take them back to feed them and bathe them and take them through medical stuff. And we went on then, and then we came to another place, and it was an open field. And they said there's a bunch of German infantry dug in across that field. They might have bazookas or stuff to knock out your tank. So go like heck. So we went like hell across there. We come up this little house. There's 4 or 5 houses. And we stopped. We run them out. And God, I was tired. Gee, I was so tired. And so I drove up alongside the house. I got out of the driver's seat and I went in the house. There was a little, right beside the tank was in the house was a little day bed. So I thought, I'm going to take a nap. And I went sound asleep. And I woke up the next morning and I had all these burns on me. Look, not burns, but marks, hot marks. And I said, what the hell is going on? He said, we had a counterattack. And he said, do you think we could wake you up?
Holy cow.
I said, I didn't even hear it. But I had the marks from a 50 caliber machine gun with the empty casings in it, you know. I didn't hear a thing. He said, well, we survived it anyway. And he said, at least you got some rest.
Man.
He said, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of this place. And I said, okay, I'll crank it up and we'll move out. Well, I said, we can't go out. He said, yes, we got to go. I said, all those dead German soldiers laying there, and they're laying right across the road. He said, you got to go. So I backed it up and headed it out that way. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to, drive over, but didn't have any choice. So I took he had levers like that to turn your tank. So I just turned loose the levers and kind of looked up the sky and drove on out. But it gives you a weird feeling.
Oh, man.
Weird feeling, And then, of course, then we went on down, and then we went in through, that's where the tank fell through the bridge. And
so this is getting towards the end of the war then?
Yeah.
Were you guys aware? Was it a general feeling, okay?
Well, we knew they were on the run, they were moving. And before we got to that point, we come to another little town, and we come in, and here come a German officer with a white flag. And I think he had a couple of hundred of his troops with him. They surrendered. They walked up, laid all their guns down, and went on. And we sat there and talked. He could speak very good English. He had been to West Point to train. He was an older man. And he said, well, the war's over for you guys. But he said, it's just starting. He said, you don't know it, but it's starting. He said, in 4 or 5 years, you're going to have to fight the Russians. You don't know that, but it's going to happen.
Wow.
He said, it's all been planned. Don't tell me, I don't want to know that, And so, as it went in history repeats, it did happen. But then we went on to our rendezvous, and we come back. And then we come back, and we went to a town, and we turned in of course, I didn't have a tank to turn in. And I was there, the war was over, and I was at this particular